The Godot video game engine is a popular open-source video game engine that a lot of people have turned to in the wake of Unity, which was another popular video game engine, unveiling a pricing scheme that was not very well liked, and in many cases it looked like was actually going to cost a lot of indie game developers a lot more than they potentially were making from video games, and penalizing them for their success. So a lot of people, when they saw the issues with the Unity game engine, started to promote the Godot video game engine, which had apparently been for a while, as an open source alternative so that they could turn away from a lot of these horrible practices from different studios that were trying to sell video game engines that people were building video games on. And the Godot video game engine has recently found itself mired in controversy that was really unnecessary, that they kind of brought upon themselves, which really highlights the point that you should really not be focusing on political activism and staying within the lane of your industry to be politically active in. For example, Signal, the Signal Foundation, which oversees the Signal application for end-to-end encryption, they regularly discuss and lobby for laws to help privacy and security for everyday people. They have gone to task talking about all the things the European Union has recently gone about doing. That makes sense for me. That is relevant to their industry. And if the Godot engine were talking about things like the Stop Killing Games initiative in the EU, for better or worse, that would make sense to me. They are in the gaming industry. But when they start talking about woke politics, which, to be fair, as someone who is bi and knows a little bit about politics, the fact that I didn't really understand what wokeness was and had to look it up really kind of cements the point that a lot of people in the mainstream are kind of, well, think this is a little bit off base. Before I forget, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and check out all of my other social media, including my Discord server where we talk about tech, cybersecurity, and a whole bunch of other things. Now, while you may be laughing at the fact that I had to look up what being woke or wokeness is, you have to understand, in the mainstream, most people are not trying to make video games and use video games as this way to be a political activist or weave a political tapestry of ideals. We are making stories to talk about different things and using it also to, as a form of entertainment, or possibly for some of us, an escape from the world that sucks as it is. So, while I don't really necessarily would say that I disagree with looking at Wikipedia where it's saying that's an adjective originally meaning alertness to racial prejudice and discrimination, and how in the 2010s it became used as slang for a broader awareness of social inequalities such as racial injustice, sexism, and denial of LGBT rights, and I don't really see how being a political activist in this regard is necessarily a bad thing. I don't really see its place and why Godot engine went down this path. And what's interesting is when reading some of the documentation recently on a Twitch stream, you will see that it doesn't exist, what I'm talking about. We had to go through the magic of archive.org to pull up the original post that talked about encrypting save games. And why? Quote, "Because the world today is not the world of yesterday. A capitalist oligarchy runs the world and forces us to consume in order to keep the gears of this rotten society on track. As such, the biggest market for video game consumption today is the mobile one. It is a market of poor souls forced to compulsively consume digital content in order to forget the misery of their everyday life, commute, or just any other brief free moment they have that they are not using to produce goods or services for the ruling class. These individuals need to keep focusing on their video games, parentheses, because not doing so will fill them with tremendous and existential angst, end parentheses, so they go as far as spending money on them to extend their experience, and their preferred way of doing so is through in-app purchases and virtual currency." That entire paragraph, in my honest opinion, really had no place whatsoever in video game engine documentation. Now, the bottom parts here, talking about the technical part of it, yeah, keep this in, but I don't really see the point in adding a political motif that some people have likened to a communist manifesto in a video game engine as being anything relevant to the overall discussion of a video game engine. Now, let me make this very clear. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be political and advocate for whatever you believe to change the world. I believe everyone has their heart in the right place to make the world a better place. However, what I am saying is there's a time and a place. Just for the same reasons at work, you probably don't want to talk about politics. You shouldn't go around talking about it in certain groups, but where it's really most appropriate, because there is a detrimental effect by trying to be political in an area where people don't really want to be political. You then can actually do damage to your movement and the causes you believe in. That is actually a big reason why in my Discord I have a rule: keep political discussions to a minimum unless directly related to technology. However, even in a political discussion, remember to be respectful, and if you can't agree, then agree to disagree. Look, it's no secret. If you go on my Discord, I've talked to a lot of these people. They have varying, differing opinions on worldviews and perspectives, because that's the beautiful thing. You should go out. You should break down echo chambers. You should find people to make you a well-rounded person, to see things from people's different perspectives. That's what makes you a wonderful person if you do this. But I also think at the same time, you shouldn't be in an echo chamber like I've basically just been saying, because then you end up in this problem right now where you think it's okay to spew your opinions where it's not always really the best idea to, and you can end up harming not only the political things you're standing up for, but the other work you're standing up for, because Godot is going to be mired in political controversy for quite some time now. To cement this point in that they are mired in controversy, look up the fact that Godot, when you used to Google them, used to actually just pull up information about how do you work with Godot. Now you do a YouTube search, there's no longer tutorials for how to use Godot at the top. It's all videos covering this drama, just like I'm discussing right now. And for some people saying, well, you know, you're creating more issue by discussing the drama. No, I'm bringing awareness to a issue that's happening in the project, as has happened in the past before I was making content when you had the GNOME versus Pop! OS System 76 desktop environment with Cosmic. These are things people should be aware is going on. The very unfortunate thing is that I think Godot is trying to accomplish some really great things to fix the video game industry with video game engines that are screwing over developers and thus end users by creating more costs. And yes, there could have been ways they went about this, discussing it better without making it a real political issue, such as going after microtransactions or talking about, you know, yes, we do have an issue with that, but when you start talking about capitalist oligarchy, you start losing a lot of people, and it makes it very clear that if this has been in the documentation for several years, that they've not really been hiding this political activism. It's just been not made aware, and like I was discussing a little bit earlier, echo chambers are something you should break down, and it's pretty obvious there was an echo chamber if they thought this kind of rhetoric was okay to start spewing into the mainstream and then start blocking a lot of people who merely just had a disagreement and said, hey, can we not focus on this and instead focus on fixing this problem with the actual game engine of a technical nature? That's what it looked like. And regarding this whole situation, the creator of Godot, Juan Linetsky, I may have butchered that name, said, I deeply believe that any political discussion that puts labels to a group of people is one that should not have started, as most of the people in this planet, no matter their political compass, seems to strongly disagree with me. I just prefer to stay entirely out of politics. That's a fair enough statement, except for one problem. You put that person in charge of the account and then allowed them to go about spewing these political things, then you have some overly political things in the documentation of your project. There were apparently a lot of people that were blocked during this whole controversy. Some of them were legitimately blocked for good reasons of being toxic, harassing, or hurling slurs, which just shouldn't be accepted anywhere regardless of your views. However, there were also a lot of people that were blocked illegitimately for just having legitimate criticism. And the Godot Foundation did have a response and basically said, if you believe you were blocked in error and have not violated our code of conduct, please contact us with the form below. We are committed to swiftly rectifying any mistakes. Here's the issue. If you don't know who legitimately was and wasn't blocked, then you probably should just unblock all those people that happened to be blocked during that entire controversy, and at most maybe put a mark next to their name so that if that thing happens again, you can then refer back to they were apparently in this ban wave here, so that way you can say, yeah, okay, this may have been a good block here. But if you can't legitimately say they were blocked for legitimate reasons, you're putting the onus on the user to appeal, and a lot of these users are just going to go on and find another project, which I think is a big reason why the Redot project is coming about, which is a fork of the Godot project. And this is one of the things a lot of people have to understand with open source is that, well, like Bender, you know, when he got tossed into the theme park, basically said, I'm going to go make my own theme park with blackjack and hookers. That's what you can do in open source, and that's what Redot looks to have done. And it looks like the Redot community is now getting harassed by the Godot community because they're upset that, you know, Redot could just fork their code, which is in a permissible MIT license, and then create their work. This is kind of how it's worked in a lot of open source projects. That's just how it is. If you think that you legitimately have a better idea or a better way to do things, then people do it. And this is common within the Linux community. You've seen it where, okay, you had Debian. People didn't like how Debian ran and thought they could do it better. Then you got Ubuntu. Then System 76 said, you know, I think we can do Ubuntu better, and made Pop! OS Linux. And they've even, you know, caused some other controversy because they've forked the GNOME environment, or, you know, something like that, and basically created the Cosmic desktop environment. And that's the way it works. That's how progress works in the open source world, is that we all can contribute to the code that, you know, is in these different repositories. Or if we don't like how things are run or how, you know, things are designed, we can fork it. Redot could honestly also take the progress from Redot and commit it upstream as well. But they could at the very same time make enough changes to diverge enough from Godot that it becomes its own entire project altogether with different API calls, functionalities, things like that. But as it currently stands right now, it looks like you can basically just take Godot and drop in Redot right now because it's only been out for a few days, so there hasn't been enough time for radical changes. And for the most part, looking at the code right now, it looks like they're mirroring a lot of what Godot's doing, but I can see that there's already discussions right now to basically merge a lot of their choices away. So it'll be interesting to see how this fares in the coming months. However, when you're looking at the closed issues inside of the Redot engine, it's very clear that there are trolls from both the left and right side of things that are just trying to muck things up. And it's interesting to see how they're just very quickly just being closed, oftentimes without comments, because to me, it's looking like Redot engine is not trying to take a political kind of stance any which way or the other. They're just trying to say, hey, let's make a good game engine, let's not get political about it, and game on. And looking at Redot engine's different social media, even their Discord server, seems to confirm my suspicion that, yeah, they're trying to make a video game engine that is great without the political BS. Looking at the, you know, Twitter over here, they made the statement that we do not hate Godot, we love Godot, which is why we want to see it thrive and fix the issues the community has been demanding for a long time. The drama that broke out was merely the catalyst that finally pushed us into action. Confirmation was Godot Foundation's horrid response. Now, while perusing the GitHub that they had, I realized that this GitHub was brand new, and it dawned on me that their social media pre-existed their GitHub, so I went to go look at their Twitter, and I noticed that they had said on October 1st, our Discord had to pause joins temporarily because we had a massive influx of bad actors and trolls who were posting things that could potentially harm our community. Devs are working and vetting volunteers. We knew that when this blew up, a lot of people would naysay and hyperfixate on every little thing that happens. They want us to fail. We have not formally launched the project. That happens this Friday. We are working to get a build ready for that. So they had trolls going into their Discord and trying to cause issues before the project was formally launched. And looking at the Discord rules, they seem pretty fair. They don't seem to be this anti-woke crowd that a lot of people are claiming them to be. It seems to solidify my belief that they are just trying to work on having a good video game engine and focus all their effort on it being technically a great project without focusing all their energy on political activism. That's at least my perspective here. And I'm saying this as someone who, again, is bi. I do happen to agree with, respect for all different groups, anti-discrimination, things like that. But I also think that there's a time and a place to discuss these things. You're pretty much only going to ever see me politically discuss privacy, security rights. You've maybe seen me in my videos talk about how we need to enact legislation to put more privacy rights in the United States and things like that. But that's because it's relevant to what I'm normally talking about. I don't think a lot of the other things that politically are even relevant to my discussions with different topics and things like that. And I think that's what Redot is hitting on, is they want to focus on the technical issues that should have been apparently fixed with the Godot engine for a while. They even say avoid controversial subjects like politics and religion. Keep the focus on Redot and game development. Real-world politics are not allowed. These rules, more or less, are very similar to the rules that I hold in my own Discord. Because a lot of people, they want to use development and stuff like that as a way to escape the problems of the world. I know when I'm tinkering with my technology and things like that, I want to focus on the problems in front of me, the code, the security, and all of that, and forget about the issues that I have to deal with day in and day out. For me, technology is an escape. For many developers, it's the same thing. A lot of us don't want to have politics, the thing that brings us a lot of anxiety in the things that happen to make us feel good. So, with that being said, this is my take on the entire situation and bringing some of you up to speed on it. I hope that, you let me know what you think down in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as well as check out all my other social media. Thank you all for checking this out. Happy hacking.